Well, thank you, Vicky. I really appreciate that. I really want to say thank you for having me. Very excited to be here. Can everyone see my screen? And can everyone see? Yes, we're good. Vicky, we're good.
Looks good.
Okay, great. Well, again, very excited to be here. I'm going to hire Vicky as my PR person. Very glad. Thank you very much for the introduction. Very excited to be here. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. So, what are we trying to do today? Well, at the end of this session, what we want you to do is to be able to classify and define the critical leadership aspects that define the it factor. There's four components we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about an agile mindset, whether you're in traditional project management, traditional waterfall, or if you are working on an agile project. If we want to talk about entrepreneurship, yes, even in a large organization, you can have an entrepreneurial mindset. And then we want to talk about learning agility, being cross functional, and then we want to talk about servant leadership influence. Okay, why do this talk? Why do I do this talk? Why did I even decide to come up with this? It's really simple. I believe in the power of human potential. And I believe we as humans, we can do the extraordinary. And so, what I want to do is help us understand this it factor so we can tap into human potential and we can tap into our teams, our organizations, and help them accomplish the extraordinary. All right, so what are we talking about when we're talking about the it factor? All right. It's often used in sports and it refers to the seemingly intangible qualities of an individual that causes them to stand out, especially in areas of leadership. So, for example, you may hear a sportscaster say, "Oh, you know what? That quarterback, they have it. They've got that it factor." Or this basketball player has that it factor. You may even hear it with an actor or something along those lines. And unfortunately, being from Chicago, we haven't had too many quarterbacks with the it factor. So, at any rate, don't judge me. But with that said, we want to go ahead and we really want to break this down. And I want to talk about initially my story. Okay? My story. So I started out my corporate career as a project manager for a huge company, and they were under government regulations. I started out in manufacturing. This manufacturing company was under tremendous pressure to deliver because of these government regulations. Now, if we were live and in person, I would ask how many people have ever been. You can use your little icon there, the reaction thing. How many people, show of hands, how many of us have ever been on government regulation projects? Anyone? Okay, a few people. I only see one. Wow. So you guys don't have to worry about regulations in New York. That's kind of cool. All right. Okay, I see a couple. All right. All right, a few. Okay. So at any rate, excuse me, got a little happy there. So we all know what this is, right? Standard stage gate, standard phase gate. If we lock our requirements down, we do our design freeze, we build something, we test something, and hopefully we deploy something. So this became my life, like I'm sure many of you have experienced. I was dealing with hundreds of projects, et cetera, et cetera. So I looked at Gantt charts all day, all night, and my mantra became lock requirements, hit the date. Lock requirements, hit the date, right? If you lock your requirements down, you can hit the date. And, ended up doing pretty well with that. And so much so that I got promoted and got promoted to the other side of the house, the digital side of the house. Now, here I am. I'm working with a bunch of data scientists. I'm working with some very smart, very intelligent people. I'm over on the digital side. I'm working with the data analytics group, and I'm going to these data scientists and I'm telling them, "Hey, we've got a lock requirements so we can hit the date. Lock requirements, hit the date." I'm giving them my whole spiel. And finally, one of the data scientists looked at me and said, "Neil, we don't have requirements." I'm like, "How could you not have requirements? What are you talking about?" He said, "We're running analytical experiments. So because we have experiments, all we have is a hypothesis and we're just testing that hypothesis out." And so that kind of messed my whole world up, and that kind of messed everything that I had known for years. And I was like, A hypo what? I was like, what? I literally had to look it up because I could not remember what a hypothesis was. And by the way, that is what my hair looked like last year during the quarantine. So at any rate, here we are with this whole Gantt chart thing, and all of a sudden now trying to run experiments, this was not working out so well for me. Why? Because they didn't have requirements, and they were just testing things out. Had to come up with a different way of operating. So what do? Well, came up with this thing called Agile, right? Where we run an experiment, and then at the end of the experiment, we would get some feedback, and then based on that, we would, continue to execute on that experiment, and then get more feedback, etc., so on and so forth. Sometimes you hear it called test and learn, right? We were testing something out. We would see what would happen after a couple of weeks, and then after a couple of weeks, we were able to get some feedback and make changes. I call these, they're called iterations, and at the end of an iteration, or possibly a sprint, I call these time boxes, or this time after the sprint, built-in pivot points. Why? Because based on the feedback, we're able to make changes. Okay? So that leads us to our first component, an agile mindset. An agile mindset. What's amazing to me is that the PMI themselves, and this was a couple of years ago, printed something in the Pulse of the Profession that said a full 71% of organizations are using some form of agile. That was 4 years ago. It's probably even more now. As a matter of fact, we all know that the PMBOK, the 6th edition, contains 186 pages on agile. Now, the PMBOK is like this. Anyone remember phone books from back in the day? I know I'm dating myself, but yeah, the PMBOK is already this big. They added 200 pages regarding Agile. The 7th edition is coming out in August, I believe. Haven't even got a chance to see that, but I'm guessing probably going to be even more than that on Agile. So what are you getting at? Well, the folks who wrote the book, literally, on waterfall, now they call it predictive, they are recognizing how important Agile is and are really incorporating that into their curriculum. Okay, so what are the benefits of Agile? Well, if you look at any kind of study, the number one benefit is the ability to adapt to changing priorities. The ability to adapt to changing priorities. Now, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I remember my wife and I came back from Cabo and working as a consultant. I was planning out, the next quarter, the next 3 months worth of travel, and we all know what happened, right? Things happened, things changed, the whole world changed, everything changed. We have to be able to adapt. We are constantly having to adapt. Things are happening very quickly. And that is the definition of Agile. Having a quick, resourceful, and adaptable character. Having a quick, resourceful, adaptable character, i.e. an agile mind. So when we're talking about Agile, we're talking about a mindset. So if you look at this chart from Ahmed Sikni from IC Agile, one of my favorite charts, show this everywhere I go. Basically, he's talking about having an agile mindset that is described by 4 values and defined by 12 principles, and then you have all these practices. Most people, when they hear Agile, they focus completely here on the practices. However, you really, or what I like to do is really coach people on having an agile mindset and really understanding the values and the principles, and then we choose whatever practices we need from there. Okay? So let's take a look at some of these values, right? This is the Agile Manifesto. A bunch of people, about 16, 17 of the best software developers, decided to go on a trip to Snowbird, Utah, and come up with something. Now, me personally, I like warm weather. I would have liked to gone to Hawaii or someplace with a beach. They didn't invite me, so they went to Snowbird, Utah. So what did they come up with? Well, they came up with this Agile Manifesto with these 4 values, right? Number 1, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Do we need processes and tools? Do we need documentation, contracts, plans? Of course we do. What this is telling us is that although there is value in these things, although there's value in processes, etc., we want to have individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software, deliverables, over comprehensive docs, customer collaboration, over contract negotiation, and as we talked about, being able to adapt or respond to change over following a plan. So let me give you an example. I'll never forget, I was working with a bunch of people and I had to work with 3 pretty high salary grade people, and we worked in a collaborative area. And these three people sat next to each other. And this is way before the pandemic, years before the pandemic. And I would say, hey, Bob, did you talk to Joe? And he'd say, well, no. Joe, did you talk to Frank? No. Frank, did you talk to Bob? No. So what I had to do was I had to call a meeting on the other side of the building just so those three people who sat next to each other would actually talk to each other. So they would actually have interactions with each other. Are processes and tools important? Yes, but it's that collaboration, it's that interaction that's key. The next thing, we want working software or deliverables. If you don't work in software, it's okay. We want to show some kind of value delivery, right? Over comprehensive documentation. Well, what do you mean? Well, I'll give you an example. One time, I'll never forget, I had to come up with this lessons learned, right? It was this lessons learned at the end of this huge government regulation, and we spent about a week. We put sticky notes up and everything, and I created probably the most comprehensive, excellent spreadsheet I have ever created in my entire life. Guess how many people asked me for that thing? Anyone want to take a guess? Put it in the chat. 0. Judy, yes, you won. Judy Paulson, none. Abel, that's right. Zilch, 0. Nobody asked me for that thing. All right, documentation is important. But in this case, what we want to do is we want to focus on value delivery. Now, the next thing, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. How many of us, you can put it in the chat, or maybe you can put it, raise your hand in the reactions. How many of us have ever had to deal with contract negotiations? Anyone? Bueller? How fun are those? How much fun are contract negotiations? Okay, Chris. So Chris, why don't you can put that in your chat. Awful. That is right, Francis. Okay. Vicky, you're lucky. You didn't have to deal with contract negotiations. Contract negotiations can be very difficult. I was in one where one company that was extremely traditional, very, very risk averse, they only wanted fixed bid. However, the third-party vendor we were dealing with, they said, that's right, Tom, not much fun at all. They said they only did time and material. And so we were in this contract negotiation. Somehow I was in the middle of it. Don't ask me why. But I was in the middle of it. And literally, it was like these people kept saying, fixed bid, time and material, fixed bid, time and material, fixed bid, time and material, fixed bid, time and material. It sounded like that old beer commercial. Tastes great, less filling, tastes great, less filling. I know I'm dating myself. But anyway, what's the point? We really want to focus on collaboration or building trust so that we come up with contracts that are win-win for both sides, right? If you have that trust, then of course the contract negotiations will go a lot better. You need contracts. We want to have that collaboration. And then, as we've mentioned, we talked about responding to change over following a plan. I'll never forget, I delegated up to my boss one time, and he had to go and create this massive plan. So he goes to Chicago. And I'm telling you, they locked themselves up in a hotel in Chicago, and they cut down, I think, half the trees in North America, all right, and put sticky notes all over the wall. What they came out with was a 10,000-line plan. 10,000-line Gantt chart, okay? Not 10,000 lines of code, 10,000 lines of Gantt chart, project plan. We had to have 1.5 FTE just to manage the plan, just to get the data, just to crank out Gantt charts and 2-week look-aheads and all that good stuff. We had to have 2 people, almost 2 people, spend full time just doing that. Guess what happened 6 weeks later? The plan completely changed. That plan, or things completely changed, and that plan was no more good. Okay? So what are we getting at? Do we need plans? Yes, we plan. We just have to know. We don't create big, humongous plans because we know things will change and we adapt to those changes, right? In Agile, you're constantly planning and replanning. Now, my early Agile experience, essentially what happened was we had hired a Scrum Master who had a really, really good resume. However, this person was extremely rigid. Ironically, they were supposed to be a Scrum Master dealing in Agile. They were very rigid and process-centric. And what happened? It was an epic fail to the point where our customers called us and said, yeah, that Scrum Master you gave us, we don't want them anymore. They called us in the morning. By that afternoon, he no longer had a badge. So what am I getting at? Well, Gartner did a study where they measured customer satisfaction of project managers, right? And they came up with 4 categories. You had people who were laggards, right? These people you basically really have to handhold, okay? Then we came up with apprentices. Now, these are people, you can give them a very basic formula. You can give them a checklist. They can follow the checklist. They can't do much more than that, all right? And then you have what they call processcrats. People who are super awesome with processes, people who were super awesome with tools. They were great. However, even though their process skill was great, if you look at the bottom on that x-axis, if you look on the y-axis, their entrepreneurial skills weren't that great, and what happened was they only somewhat met expectations. So they came up with a 4th group called entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs. And this isn't entrepreneurs like in a startup company. These are project managers. And by the way, this study was completely done on waterfall project managers. They said the top 24% of project managers are entrepreneurial. They have an entrepreneurial mindset. Which brings us to our second component, entrepreneurship. The study goes on to say that too many project managers miss the mark. Why? Because they say 76% of us are too process-centric. Only 24% of project managers in today's world, and this study was done several years ago, so I'm sure it's even more dramatic than that, but only 24% of people have an entrepreneurial mindset and really, really satisfy the customer, really bring good results to their customer, right? And it says here that the best project managers, they go beyond process. They go beyond process. What do you mean? They focus on entrepreneurship. They focus on business outcomes. I like to coach my teams. We want to focus on value delivery over activity. Do you need activity? Of course you need activity. But whatever activity you do, I'm sorry, is the audio low? Are you guys having a hard time hearing me? Vicky?
I'm hearing you okay. I did see somebody say it was low, and then I'm hearing that the slides are a little fuzzy, so I don't know if you can make that portion of your screen a little bit bigger.
Okay, this part is a little difficult to see, so let's do this. Bam! There, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so, yeah, sorry about that. So these entrepreneurial folks, they really focus on business outcome. As I mentioned, I try to focus my teams on value delivery over activity. The activity is to help deliver value, right? They focus on business partnerships, and they can manage risk to business value. And look at this. Now, again, I found this amazing. They view scope change as an opportunity for greater value delivery. What do you mean? Well, that sounds an awful lot like what we do in Agile, right? When you have an Agile mindset, that's what we do. We focus on working software or deliverables. We focus on the collaboration. We talk about relieving impediments, and we respond to change over following a plan, right? The highest priority is to satisfy the customer through continuous delivery of valuable software. Okay, so what are you getting at? I found this interesting. I said, well, why do they call it entrepreneurial? Why do they call it entrepreneurial? Well, this article in Forbes was my answer. It said that entrepreneurs, in the purest sense, are those who identify a need, any need, and fill it. Those who identify a need, any need, and fill it. So, entrepreneurship is a primordial, right? A primordial and basic fundamental urge independent of product, service, or market. What are you getting at? It's in each and every one of us to have an entrepreneurial spirit. By definition, those who identify a need, any need, and fill it, right? So, a key entrepreneurial trait is initiative. A key entrepreneurial trait is initiative, the ability to solve problems and take actions by thinking of the solutions rather than being told or ordered what to do. Steve Jobs said it like this. He said, "It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people to tell us what to do." I'll never forget. I was working with somebody, and we hired this person, and I was extremely busy. I honestly did not do a very good job onboarding them. Didn't do a good job at all. Okay. I said, hey, look, I know I'm super busy. What I want you to do, go over to this building that's 45 minutes away. That's where you're going to be working. Just try to get a lay of the land, do your onboarding videos and stuff like that. And I'll try to get with you soon. Okay. Within 2 weeks, basically a sprint, I checked back in with her. I said, hey, how things are going? How are things going? She was like, oh, yeah, things are great. Here are the key players. Here's what's happening. Here's what's happening with the project. Here's my options. Here's what I think we can do. Da, da, da. She had the whole thing laid out. She had made connect. She did not know anybody. It was a different building, a different company, a different town. And she made relationships. She connected with people. And yes, absolutely, Vicky, she was a rock star. She was probably one of the best project program managers I ever had. Most of my one-on-ones was not me telling her what to do or coaching her. It was me listening to her and listening to her ideas and what she was doing with that project or that program, and honestly just taking mental notes. That was our one-on-ones. I spent 99% of my time listening to her. She was phenomenal. I had another individual. One time, when I was doing hiring, I was talking to recruiters, and I said, you know what? I need to find a way to test initiative. Is there a way we could put spunky on a resume? Is there a way we can actually measure, how much initiative people had? And one of the things I started doing was having the recruiters sit in with me. And again, I know there's all kind of HR stuff in different companies, but we were able to do it. Don't worry, don't ask how. We were able to do it. The recruiter would sit in there in the interview, and they started understanding. Again, Agile is all about collaboration. She started understanding what I was looking for, and so she started bringing me people who had a lot of initiative. And another person she brought somebody who did not have a super strong IT background, but she had a lot of initiative. She was spunky. She was a great communicator. She did everything she could to help her customers, to really deliver those business outcomes that we talked about. And she did such a great job that our internal customers were so impressed with her that they hired her directly within 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Shortest time I ever had anybody. But she did such a great, great job. To this day, I tell her all the time that wherever I speak at, I always tell her about the spunky Scrum Master. All right, so when we have this entrepreneurial approach, we want to have a solution-based approach. And in order to have a solution-based approach, we want to think, what problem are we trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve? You see Einstein's quote here, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about it and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. What problem are we trying to solve? If there's anything my first mentor drilled into my head was this: figure out what problem you're trying to solve, and then we can figure out whatever methodology. I'll never forget, I was meeting with the senior VP, and she was on a very transformational initiative. And, I sat down with them, one of my first meetings. She's like, we got to do this, that, the other. I said, hold on a second. Before we get into what agile methodology, what practices we got to run, etc., help me understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then we'll figure out what practices we should use. She stopped there, took one look at me and said, oh my gosh, you are like a breath of fresh air. Every other person we came in here tried to shoehorn us into some kind of framework. They didn't take any time to understand our business, and it just did not work. And I didn't realize they had been through like 3 other agile people before me. So she was extremely skeptical. But that one conversation, just me asking this very simple question, what problem are you trying to solve, completely changed the dynamic. And she was dead set against any Agilist. Now, not only do I work with her, she has another team working with other teams, and they hired a Scrum Master, and on and on and on. So just that one question, what problem are we trying to solve, and really trying to understand the problem will help you as an Agilist, will help you even if you're in project management, doesn't matter, that will help you incredibly. Because as my mentor liked to used to say, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. If we only know one way of doing things, if we only know one way, and you could do it in Agile too. Like I said, we had a very rigid Scrum Master one time. You can get so locked into a framework, so locked into a practice, so locked into something that you think that's the solution for everything, when in which case it may not be. Certain practices were created to solve certain problems. I had proposed years ago that our PMOs be cross-functional dynamic PMOs, meaning that we have this learning agility, we have T-shaped skills. What are you talking about? Okay, this is going to be a bit of an eye chart, so let me magnify here. All right, so what they found was that in addition to the other things I mentioned about entrepreneurship, they said that one of the things about entrepreneurial project managers was learning agility and business knowledge. Learning agility and business knowledge. In other words, they were able to learn quickly, they added to their repertoire very quickly, and they really took the time to understand the business. See, oftentimes when we talk about T-shaped skills, we're talking about for developers, right? If you see the thing that says deep, that's your area of strength. And then if you look across the top, that's, I call it knowing enough to be dangerous, right? You want to know enough to be dangerous. You want to have a broad range of skills. My philosophy when I hired people, didn't matter if it was a project manager, a BA, a Scrum Master, an Agile coach, didn't matter. I should be able to put them in one part of an organization, and if they have that learning agility, if they have that desire to learn, they should be able to, after their learning curve, be able to do very well and be able to thrive, right? We want people who are extremely versatile. Ironically, I was working with a bunch of data scientists, as I mentioned before, super smart people. I'm talking, for example, one of the teams I worked with, 5 people had master's degrees, 3 people had PhDs, and one guy had 2 PhDs. And I have ADHD. So I was like, what am I going to do with these smart people? What I ended up doing was I took a Python for Dummies class, right? Not because I wanted to be a great coder, but I just wanted to understand the process a little bit. So I took this Python for Dummies courses where I think, like a 10-year-old could take, and they can do well with that. I took that, and the amazing thing is, my strength, the deep part here, if you take a look here, that deep part, my strength is really with principles, with leadership, people, that kind of a thing, right? And, I didn't come from a technical background. So I was trying to increase the top part of that T by taking Python. But the amazing thing is, it gave me so much respect, and it gave me a lot of credibility with them, not because I was such a great Python developer, because I'm not. I can maybe write 10 lines of code where I can get the thing to say, hello world, and figure out how much my lunch, my tax, and how much extra I have to pay Grubhub or DoorDash or whatever. And, your food ends up being twice as much as the actual thing costs, but we won't talk about that right now. But my point is that it gave me so much credibility with them just because I took the time. And, ironically, because I took a technical course, it helped develop some empathy because I can see where they were coming from, helped me understand what they were going through. So how do you develop your learning agility and T-shaped skills? Number one, there is so much information out there, right? Things like this. This is great that, your chapter, this New York chapter, is putting on events like this and have other great speakers coming in, right? There's all kind of stuff out there. We live in the information age, all kind of ways to help develop yourself. The second thing is develop your professional network, right? Develop your professional network. A lot of times it's not just what you know, it's who you know. To give you an example, one time, I'll never forget, I was working with those data scientists, and they said, hey, we need access to this data. It was very highly sensitive data, and not many people had access to it. I said, okay, I'll take care of it. They're like, what? I said, I'll take care of it. Well, how did I take care of it? Well, the person who can grant access used to walk behind my desk every morning. So what I would do is, when I kind of figured out what time they were going to come, and by the time they came across to get their morning coffee, I would turn around and say, hey, how you doing? How the kids doing? Okay, great. Oh, wonderful. Hey, by the way, could you look at this email? Can you help me out here, please? And she took a look at it. She said, oh, yeah, Neil, no problem. I'll go ahead and get approval. You guys will have the data. I'll never forget the next morning. They were like, Neil, how did you get that data? I said, don't worry about it. Well, what are you getting at? You got to know someone who knows someone. When I was at PMI Global that Vicky was talking about a couple years ago, I told them to turn around, turn to their neighbor and say, you got to know someone who knows someone. And they kind of all looked at each other like, huh? And I'm like, tell your neighbor, you got to know someone who knows someone. And then it hit me. I realized I was in Philadelphia. I said, oh, excuse me. Tell them I got a guy. I got a girl. They were like, oh, okay. Anyway, you got to develop your professional network. The next thing is you've got to look for new opportunities in your current situation. Always be looking for new opportunities. I know maybe you don't have the best opportunity. Maybe it's not the best job situation. But I'm just a firm believer that, you will find what you seek. If you are putting it out there, if you're really trying to look for opportunities, and I don't mean necessarily another job, I just mean opportunities to learn. Maybe you can find a mentor. Maybe there's a department that's doing something kind of cool. You can do a knowledge transfer. Maybe it's just finding somebody on LinkedIn. It doesn't matter. You look for opportunities in your current situation. And if people do that, I believe we'll have cross-functional dynamic PMOs, like I mentioned earlier, where we have a diverse range of experiences. We theoretically can put them in a variety of contexts, and they should be able to thrive. What I'm really getting at is this. John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid. The law of the lid. Our leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. What are you getting at? The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his potential. So what do you mean? Well, if a person has a low lid, if they only know one way of doing things, like we talked about earlier, they can only help people that are dealing with certain problems, certain situations, right? That brings us to our final component, leadership. John Maxwell, my favorite author, and I'm a member of the John Maxwell team, he said this. He said the true measure of leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. So when I'm talking about leadership, or when John Maxwell is talking about leadership, we're not talking about salary grade. We're not talking about what title you hold. We're not talking about how high up the org chart you are. Because to be honest with you, my neck used to hurt looking up at everybody, right? But it was this ability, this quote, leadership is influence, that absolutely changed my life. It helped me understand that wherever I was in an organization, I can be an influence. I can help influence change. See, the thing is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And regardless if it's waterfall, agile, lean, six, it doesn't matter. Whatever framework you're using, whatever methodology you're using, it's really about working with people. And so the reason why I do these talks is very simple. It's because people naturally follow leaders that are stronger than themselves. So what I try to do is to help people lift their lid. I really try to help people, in all honesty, blow their lids off. Well, what are you getting at? See, the thing is that let's say your leadership lid, for whatever reason, is a 4, right? And then that means that the only people you can deal with are people who are, say, 3. Now, this is just an arbitrary scale. The number doesn't mean anything. The point being is you can only take people as far as you've gone. And as mentioned, what I want to do is absolutely blow the lid off people's minds. I want to help people really maximize their potential. I want to help people take their lid off and really help people develop themselves. Let's say that they're a 7. Let's say they become an 8, a 9, or a 10. Let's say you really develop yourself professionally, right? You really start growing. You start developing all these components we've talked about, right? Well, what that means is the more that you develop yourself, the greater your ability to influence. See, the thing is, this whole it factor, and I tell people this all the time. I speak at conferences all over. I tell people, the goal is not to become agile. What? You're this agile transformation coach, business agility, etc., etc. Yes, agile is a means to an end. Agile is a mindset. It's one of these 4 components. But the whole point of this, the reason why you use agile or lean or whatever it is not an end in and of itself, but the end is to create high-performing teams that deliver value. It's to be able to create high-performing teams. I believe I absolutely believe that if you develop these 4 components, you develop the it factor, you will start maximizing your potential and you will help other people, you will help other organizations do the extraordinary. See, I've seen it happen with my own eyes. I've seen teams that were floundering around that had no idea what they were doing. All of a sudden, start adopting some of these principles, start using this it factor, and all of a sudden they became finalists for the Chairman's Award for Innovation. I've seen companies that struggled for years to try to get things to production. Within 6 months, were able to bring it finally to production. And I'm talking executive leaders were so excited. I've seen it with my own eyes where people who were absolutely burnt out, were people who were completely ready to quit their jobs, said, you know what? Now I have hope. Now people, even my coworkers, are noticing that I'm in such a better mood. So what am I saying? What I'm encouraging each and every one of us to do is to develop these 4 components. Develop your it factor, maximize your potential, and go and help influence organizations. Organizations, whether that's corporate organizations, whether that's non-for-profit organizations, whether that's family. Whether that is family. All right. Well, thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to switch gears here, and I want you to go to menti.com, and you see the code here, and they're going to put the code in the chat. Go ahead, menti.com, put the code in the chat, and what I want you to do is rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 where you are in the agile mindset, where you are in entrepreneurship, where you are in cross-functionality, and where you are in leadership. Okay? Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. This is all about learning, so don't feel bad. Do not worry about what your score is. If it's a 1, no problem. It's okay. Go ahead, be honest, put your scores in. All right, we've got a couple people, actually 1 person. Let's get a few more. Great. Got some scores coming in. All right, looking at these scores, I kind of feel like the guy in the election. All right, so. Okay, good. Get some more. Oh, what happened here? Somebody writing something?
Somebody's got a whiteboard going on? How'd that happen?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Cleared up.
There we go. Okay, we got some scores coming in. Okay, some 3s, 3.5. Leadership. Wow, we got some good scores on leadership. Great. All right, keep putting those in. And here's what we're going to do. What I want you to do, leadership. Oh, I got 2 H's in there. Right. Spelling is not part of the it factor, so it's not one of the 4 components. Can't do anything without spell check anymore. So thanks for pointing that out. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to open up breakout rooms, and here's what I want you to do. I want you to talk about kind of where you're at, based upon these scores. Say where you're at, and then the next part of it is this, and this is really key. This next exercise is, I want you guys to brainstorm about some ideas how you can develop your it factor. How can you develop your 4 components, right? So you're going to go into breakout rooms. You're going to have a discussion about where you're at, current state, and then second thing is, how do you get to a future state based on these 4 components of agile mindset, entrepreneurship, cross-functionality, and leadership. Okay? And spelling is not included in there. So go ahead. I'm going to turn it back over to, I think it was Cheryl who's going to take host, and you're going to open up breakout rooms? Or do you want me to, Cheryl? Or Vicky, whoever? Totally fine?
I'm creating them right now.
Okay. We got what, about?
I thought you lost your host access, so I could do it for you, but go
okay.
For it.
We got about 56 people, so maybe 10 rooms.
Oh, I have like 8 rooms.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Or maybe 7 now, but I've seen some drop.
Totally fine.
All right, and the host will be bouncing in and out of rooms, so if you're one of the co-hosts, you can join or not join, but I know I'll be bouncing around a little bit. broadcast message.
Yep.
What are the asks again?
Um, discuss,
Where?
yeah, current state. Where are you at in regards to the four components, and then brainstorm ideas of how you can develop your different components. How can you develop your agile mindset, your entrepreneurship, cross functionality, and leadership?
I just spelled entrepreneurship right.
Yeah, and I can't believe I misspelled leadership.
Actually, I was going to say the pork for.
All right, I'm gonna go.
And we'll come back in 10 minutes.
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
About 5 till. We do a quick wrap up after that. Great. All right, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. I remember the first time I did a Zoom meeting with breakout rooms and things. I felt like the guy on Star Trek where I can beam people here and there. So, anyway, really quick, want to ask anyone have any questions or anyone want to discuss something really quick? We have just a couple minutes here about anything I talked about or maybe something you guys discussed in your breakout rooms. You can unmute yourselves and ask away. Yeah, so the great question. Basically, what you want. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, really, when you're talking about entrepreneurial, you're talking about having an entrepreneurial mindset, right? If you think about what an entrepreneur does, he doesn't wait for, this department to do that, this department. It's your business. If you're an entrepreneur, it's your business, and you've got to make sure it goes, right? I think it's all about the ownership of it and having that initiative. So it's really those kind of things about having that initiative and the ownership. When I say ownership, I don't mean control. What I mean is just really looking at things and not just worried about your process. I did so many things that were probably not within a quote unquote PM role. And that really helped me in my career where I ended up learning all kind of different things and honestly allowed me to do what I'm doing now. So great question there. Any other comments or questions? All right. Awkward silence. Anyone binge watching something really cool on Netflix? All right. The Crown. Okay. I was doing Cobra Kai for a while, and then I was in The Mandalorian and WandaVision. But anyway, too much information.
I'm 20 years late to The Sopranos.
Sopranos. Okay, there you go. All right. What I'm going to do, if there's any other Ozark, okay, couple. Boy, you guys really blew this up. All right. If what I want to do is, I do this for all the chapters. Definitely want to do it for you all here. If you're interested, I'll give you one free coaching session. I don't care if you want to talk about Agile, if you just want to talk about general leadership, you just want to talk about maximizing human potential. You want to run a 5K, a marathon, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. I'm more than happy to help you with your goals in any way I can. Ironically, I even use Agile when I'm doing people with personal development, whether they're trying to start their own business or, if they want to work out or whatever it is they want to do. I use a lot of Agile principles in that too. Thank you all very much. Here's my contact information. Please contact me. That's my email. Look me up on LinkedIn. First name is spelled Neil, Niel. Parents made my life difficult. That way it's pronounced Neil, but it's Niel. Thank you all very much. Going to leave any parting words, anything else, Cheryl or Vicky or anyone?
Before you leave, don't forget to fill out the survey that just came out.
Oh, yes, there's a survey. Yes, please fill out the survey.
Is it in our email or?
It's been sent to your email already.
Okay,
Great, fantastic. All right, any other comments, questions, anything else? Vicky, Cheryl, anyone?
No, thank you so much, Neil. This was as great as I remembered, if not better, and it translated to Zoom pretty well. Of course, you probably have some experience at it now, but yeah, great job. And thanks everybody for your participation. The breakout group sounded great.
Well, thank you all very much.
You're going to have to self-report PDUs for this one, but it should be in the meeting description. Okay. And the slide should be posted on the website sometime next week.
Yes, I will send that to you. Matter of fact, I owe you guys.
May I ask a quick question?
Yes.
In
levels of management and mismanagement with COVID, what do you consider, and I would assume Agile would have to be a huge part of the success, what would you consider a gold standard that you've seen, you know, anecdotally? I know New York has done a good job in some respects. New Zealand has done a fabulous job.
Yeah, I think the ones that you kind of mentioned, as far as which ones are the best or not, I can't necessarily speak to. Of course, I've heard about New Zealand; they were like 0% or something ridiculous. But I know, put it to you this way, they're the ones that are doing really, really well. You don't hear about too often. You hear about New Zealand. I heard somebody say, and again, I don't make any political statements. I only make political jokes. I heard somebody say that CNN stood for constant negative news. But anyway, point being is that I honestly I don't know that I'm great to speak on that. New Zealand was probably the one that sticks out in my mind. Haven't really got a chance to speak on that or do a ton of research on it. Usually when I hear about stuff, it's usually horrible. Although I was at a very big pharmaceutical company that came out with a virus that's based in New York, and I won't say the name, but that came out, with the vaccine for the virus. I was there while they were developing the vaccine last year. All right, any other comments or questions or anything? Going. Thank you all very much, and I'll send you guys the PDF of the file of the PowerPoint, and if you guys can send me a link to the recording or something, that'd be great.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Thank you.
evening.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for all your help.